You cried at a song this week, and you didn't tell anyone why. Or maybe you walked into a room, said nothing, and knew, within 10 seconds, that two people in there had been fighting. Or you read a headline about a stranger on the other side of the world, and your whole chest went tight, like it happened to someone you love. And somewhere along the way, you decided that was a problem, that you were too much, too sensitive, too intense, too deep, for a world that seems to move along just fine on the surface. So here's the question I want you to sit with for the next few minutes. What if the thing you've spent years apologizing for is actually the most valuable equipment you own? Because you've been told a story about yourself. You've heard it from teachers, from partners, from family members who meant well, and still got it completely wrong. You think too much. You're too quiet. You take things too personally. Why can't you just let it go? And you believe them. Of course you did. When enough people describe you the same way, you stop arguing and start hiding. You learn to laugh at the right moments, to keep your observations to yourself, to seem lighter than you actually are. And it worked. People stopped commenting. But something quiet happened underneath. You started to think the very machinery that makes you you was broken. It isn't. And psychology has been telling a very different story for decades. Most people just never heard it. Let me be clear about something before we go further, because this matters. None of this is about being better than other people. Superiority isn't the lens here. Differences. Researchers who study the far ends of personality and cognition keep finding the same thing. Some brains don't just do more of what everyone else does. They run on a different architecture entirely. They connect distant ideas at once, instead of in sequence. They process inward by default, instead of outward. They take in emotional information that other brains automatically filter out as background noise. That's not a personality quirk you can coach away. That's an operating system. And when you spend your whole life running software most people around you don't have installed, the result isn't arrogance. It's a quiet, persistent sense of standing slightly outside the room. Start with the feeling part, because that's the root of everything else. You have a network in your brain called the mirror neuron system. It's the reason you wince when someone else stubs their toe. In most people, it's a gentle echo. You notice their pain, you register it, you move on. In you, it doesn't stay an echo. It plays at full volume. Neuroscience research using brain imaging has found that people high in sensitivity show significantly stronger activation in the insula and in mirror neuron regions when they look at another person's emotional expression, especially the faces of people they care about. So hear this clearly. You're not imagining that you feel other people's feelings in your body. You're describing your own neurology accurately, and you're probably the only person in the room who is. The psychologist Elaine Aron gave this a name in the 90s, sensory processing sensitivity, what most people now call being a highly sensitive person. Around 15 to 20% of people have it. And it shows up in 4 ways she summarized as depth of processing, tendency toward overstimulation, emotional reactivity and empathy, and sensitivity to subtle stimuli. Read that again, slowly, because it explains your entire life. Depth of processing. That's why you can't take an answer at face value. Overstimulation. That's why the mall wrecks you. Emotional reactivity. That's the music, the headline, the tightness in your chest. Subtle stimuli. That's noticing the half-second delay before someone laughs. It's not 6 unrelated flaws. It's one trait, expressing itself 6 different ways. Which brings us to solitude, and why yours isn't avoidance. You know that specific exhaustion after a long social day. Not sleepy. Something heavier. Sitting right behind your eyes, where all you want is a closed door and no one asking anything of you. Then you get that door, and something strange happens. The mind that felt dull in the crowd suddenly switches on. Ideas arrive. Clarity comes back. Here's why. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reflection and complex reasoning, works best with minimal external input. For most people, socializing is a recharge. For you, it's a cost. Because you're not just having a conversation, you're tracking 6 layers of it at once. Researchers at the London School of Economics even found that more intelligent people reported lower life satisfaction from frequent socializing. Their brains don't refuel that way. Neither does yours. Then there's the questioning, which has probably caused you more friction than anything else. Most people meet a piece of information, file it, and go on with their day. You meet it, and immediately start digging underneath. Why is that true? What are we assuming? Who benefits from everyone accepting this? Psychologists connect this to high openness to experience, one of the big 5 personality traits, and to what Cacioppo and Petty called need for cognition, a measurable, stable drive to engage deeply with information rather than take the shortcut. It's not a habit. It's a set point, which is exactly why you were the kid asking questions the teacher didn't want, and the adult who can't execute a plan without understanding the reasoning behind it. You were never being difficult. You were being thorough in a room that only asked for fast. And that same trait is why people have called you lazy, the single most unfair word ever aimed at you. They see you hesitate before starting. They see you take a week to make a decision they'd make over lunch. They assume you lack drive. What they can't see is what's happening under the pause. You're mapping the terrain. You're asking questions they genuinely never thought to ask. Is this worth doing? What will this actually cost me? Not in money, in attention, in the parts of myself I don't get back. High need for cognition means you consider second and third order consequences that most people never even glimpse. Yes, from the outside, it looks slow. But when you finally move, you move with clarity. You're not reacting to a moment. You're responding to the whole picture. Now the part that makes social life feel almost surreal. You read people. Not metaphorically, literally. Moment by moment. Whether you want to or not. You clock the micro-expression that lasts a quarter of a second. The shift in someone's voice when a particular name comes up. Who's performing confidence they don't feel. Your amygdala and insula, the regions handling emotional salience and gut-level intuition, respond to signals other brains simply don't flag. And the gift here is genuinely enormous. You can tell when someone's bluffing. You can sense within minutes whether a person is real or performing. You have walked away from people who would have hurt you long before they showed you why. And you probably never got credit for it, because the disaster you avoided never happened. But I'd be lying if I said it was free, because seeing what others can't puts you in an impossible position over and over. Do you say something and get called paranoid, dramatic, too sensitive? Or do you stay quiet and carry a truth nobody asked you to hold? Most of the time, you choose quiet. It's easier. It costs less socially. And then that silence accumulates, year after year, into a very particular kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of having no one around, but the loneliness of being the only person in the room who can see what's actually happening. If nobody has ever said this to you directly, that is heavy. It has always been heavy. And the fact that you've carried it without hardening is not nothing. There's another thread running through your whole life, and it explains why your path never looked like anyone else's. Your interests don't come from outside you. Trends leave you cold. The status symbols, the collective excitement about the newest thing, you watch it the way you'd watch weather. What pulls you comes from somewhere internal and stubborn, towards subjects nobody around you shares. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying exceptionally creative people across science and art. And the one thing they had in common wasn't talent. It was intrinsic motivation. Curiosity that can't be explained to someone who doesn't already feel it. So you changed direction. You walked away from things that looked successful from the outside. And the only compass you actually trusted was the one in your chest. Which brings us to the last piece. And honestly, the one that changes everything. You feel all of this. The music, the strangers, the room, the weight, at a volume most people cannot imagine. And yet, you rarely explode. You've learned, through years of private, invisible work nobody applauded, to hold an emotion without becoming it. To feel the storm and stay still at the center of it. That is not suppression. Suppression is refusing to feel at all, and it makes people brittle. What you developed is what psychologists call emotional regulation capacity, the ability to feel something completely, while keeping enough cognitive space to choose your response. It's one of the highest forms of psychological maturity there is, and most people never build it, because most people live without the gap. Something happens, an emotion fires, and behavior follows automatically. Anger becomes shouting. Hurt becomes withdrawal. Fear becomes freezing. They're not choosing. They never develop the space between feeling and action. You live in that space. That's where you observe, where you process, where you decide what the right response actually is, instead of just releasing whatever the feeling demands. And this is exactly why people misread you so badly. They see a calm surface and assume shallow water. They have no idea there's an ocean under it. This one capacity is what makes everything else possible. It's why you can be alone without being lonely. think deeply without spiraling, and see through people without turning cynical. So look at what we've actually covered. Solitude that restores you, a mind that can't stop at the surface, selectivity that gets called laziness, the ability to read a room like it's written in a language only you can see, curiosity that pulled you off the safe path, and feeling everything intensely while staying in command of yourself. Every single one of those can be misread as a flaw, and every single one of them has been, probably by someone whose opinion mattered to you. But here's what nobody told you. These aren't defects in the design. They are the design. And spending your life trying to run the other operating system, the one built for shallower water, shorter questions, feelings that don't reach as deep, was never going to work. Not because you were failing, but because you were built for something else. So if this video finally put language to something you've carried your whole life without a name for it, drop a comment with the number of the sign that hit you hardest. I read them. And honestly, that comment section is the most understood a lot of people have felt in years. Share this with the person you've thought of around minute 4. And before you go, sit with this. The goal was never to feel less. It was to stop translating yourself for people who were never going to read the original. Everything you were told to fix was just proof that your mind goes where most minds never bother to travel. The only real question left is what happens when you finally stop hiding it. And that's exactly what we're getting into next.